The door to the Grand Council chamber opened with a hiss that echoed like a judge's gavel in a silent courtroom. Ambassador Silas Wren stepped through, 3 minutes late, carrying a polished wooden box and an apologetic smile. "I do beg your pardon," he said, voice light as vapor. "The tea service on Concord Station is painfully slow today." No one laughed, but Silas didn't seem to mind. He took his seat at the circular diplomatic dais, brushing a non-existent speck from his lapel, as though this were a brunch, not a tribunal. Around him, representatives of 17 starfaring species watched with a mix of disdain, unease, and mild curiosity. Directly opposite sat High Marshal Nerex, a broad-shouldered Volcari whose scales shimmered like molten gold under the room's sterile light. His nostrils flared. "You humans continue to confuse formality with delay." "On the contrary," Silas said, unlocking his box with a gentle click. Inside were ceramic cups, delicate and steaming. "We merely believe diplomacy is best served warm." He placed one cup before him, then offered another across the table. The Tixari delegate, a tremulous bundle of fur and bureaucracy named Jinax, hesitated, then accepted with both trembling hands. Silas sipped. "Elderberry chamomile. Calming for the nerves. And today's discussion, I suspect, may rattle a few." Marshal Nerex's tail twitched. "You came here to speak of stolen children." Silas set down his cup. "Taken children," he corrected quietly. "Stolen implies intention. I have no reason to assume malevolence." Yet, the words settled like smoke. Behind Silas, his assistant, a quiet woman with cybernetic eyes and a stack of datapads, handed him a crisp slate. He ignored it for now. Better to let silence do its work. Counselor Vale of the Selentari, long-necked, ageless, draped in star silk, cleared her throat. "Ambassador Wren, the Empire's official report states the incident occurred during an inspection of an unauthorized human colony on Kefren 8. The children in question were relocated for safety during planetary compliance assessments." Silas gave her a nod of practiced respect. "Of course. Standard procedure, I'm sure. But these were not orphan civilians. They were under diplomatic protection. I've already submitted the credentials." "The credentials were unregistered," Nerex interrupted. "So was the planet," Silas replied evenly. There was a flicker of amusement from the Selentari. Even Jinax managed a cough that might have been a stifled laugh. Nerex scowled. "Your species thrives on technicalities," the Volcari growled. Silas steepled his fingers. "We thrive on survival, Marshal. Words are merely the softest tools in our kit." The tension in the room shifted. Subtle, like a wind changing before a storm. The kind of shift predators notice, and prey ignore until it's far too late. Jinax wrung his paws. "Surely, this misunderstanding can be untangled? The children are unharmed, fed, monitored, given access to educational interfaces." Silas tilted his head. "Were they given comfort, familiarity, a sense of safety? Because I assure you, for human children, being surrounded by armed alien guards is not equivalent to an educational environment." "We were not armed," Nerex snapped. "Then why are there burn marks on the girls' palms?" Silas asked, pulling up an image on his slate. The room froze. On the screen, a small hand, delicate and bruised, bandaged crudely. A medical scan showed superficial damage to epidermal layers, likely from forced restraint or electrical shock. The image disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared. Silas set the slate down without comment. Vale's voice, usually melodic, now carried iron beneath it. "We were not informed of injuries." "I suspect," Silas said softly, "there are many things you have not been informed of." The door at the rear of the chamber hissed again, and a uniformed attendant entered with a sealed crystal data chip. He crossed quickly, bowed to Silas, and placed it in his hand. Silas examined it. Thin, elegant, stamped with the seal of Volcari command. "Marshal," he said. "May I?" Nerex gave a grudging nod. Silas slid the chip into the holodeble. The projection flared to life. A security recording. 2 human children, one about 9, the other maybe 6, were seated in a holding cell. They were speaking softly to each other, unaware of the recording. Then a Volcari officer entered. Loud, unsmiling. He barked at them in harsh tones. The boy flinched. The girl, confused, reached out toward him. The officer struck her hand away. Not hard, but hard enough. The video ended. The silence afterward was a crater. "I understand cultural differences," Silas said, tone almost kind. "In some species, raising one's voice is a form of affection. In ours, it's often a prelude to violence." Nerex remained silent, his jaw set like stone. Vale folded her hands. "Ambassador, what do you request?" Silas smiled gently. "Request is a strong word. Allow me instead to make a suggestion. Return the children. Apologize for the mishandling. Promise to do better. We'll consider it a regrettable but forgivable misstep." "And if we refuse?" Nerex asked. Silas didn't answer immediately. He picked up his tea and sipped. "My grandmother," he said, "once told me a story. She said if someone ever laid hands on me, she'd burn down the sky to find who did it. At the time, I thought it was poetic nonsense." He placed the cup down. "Then I joined the diplomatic corps, and I realized something." He leaned forward, eyes suddenly sharp. "My grandmother wasn't being poetic. She meant it. Literally." Jinax's ears drooped. Vale looked away. Nerex narrowed his eyes. "Your people signed the Galactic Accord," the marshal said. "We did," Silas replied. "And we meant every word. But you never asked what we consider war. You never asked what we are when we stop pretending we've forgotten." The chamber fell into a vacuum of stillness. Silas rose, straightened his jacket, and collected his tea set. "You have 24 hours, he said. "To do what?" Nerex asked, though his voice had lost some of its iron. Silas paused at the doorway. "To remember that peace is not a leash, Marshal. It's a choice. And we've honored it for 40,000 years." His smile returned, but it no longer reached his eyes. "We are, after all, a very peaceful people." He left them there, with the image of bruised palms and the scent of elderberry still in the air. In the corridor beyond, his assistant, Agent Harrow, fell in beside him. "They're not going to comply," she said. "No," Silas agreed. "They won't." Harrow handed him another data slate. "Contingency Alpha 3 is in place. Fleet repositioned under Deep Silence Protocol. Earth Command requests authorization." Silas walked a few more steps before speaking. "The children. Alive. Quiet. No permanent damage. Briggs is watching them personally." Silas exhaled, slow, thoughtful. "Send the signal." "To the fleet?" "No," he said. "To the children. Let them know we're coming." Harrow nodded and peeled away. Silas paused by a wide viewport overlooking the stars. Concord Station glowed in the distance, like a jewel set in black velvet. Ships moved in silent choreography, the Empire's pride and power on full display. He sipped his tea, now cold. Somewhere behind him, alarms began to chime. A quiet voice echoed in his memory. "They're just children, Silas." And his own reply years ago in a quiet briefing room on Earth. "Which is exactly why we'll burn whole planets, if we must." He set the empty cup down on a ledge, adjusting it until it was perfectly centered. Then he walked away. The galaxy had always believed that humans were endearing. They made good music, terrible cuisine, and asked far too many questions. They were newcomers, polite to the point of irritation, always offering handshakes and strange idioms. But they followed the rules. They smiled when reprimanded. They signed every treaty, nodded in every meeting, and never raised their voice, never raised a weapon. It was easy, then, to place them near the bottom of the galactic hierarchy. Charming, yes. Dangerous? Hardly. That was the mistake. Aboard the human embassy's orbital platform, unremarkably named Peacehold, Captain Leona Briggs adjusted the scope on her rifle with the same serenity one might bring to adjusting a bow tie. She sat in a lounge that pretended to be a sunroom, sipping artificial lemonade, while an 8-foot window showed a panoramic view of stars crawling by. Across from her, an elderly Centauri scholar fumbled with a chessboard, trying not to look at the weapon laid across Leona's lap. You know, she said, moving her knight into position, in our culture, this game is more of a meditative practice than a contest. Leona smirked. In ours, it's a blood sport for nerds and spies. The Selentari, Kellen, he had introduced himself, chuckled nervously and made a move. His hand trembled slightly. You're scared, she observed, not unkindly. He looked up with apologetic eyes. We're taught to be cautious, especially around predators. Leona moved her bishop, snapping it into place. Good instinct. Silence settled over the table like mist. Outside, a human support vessel detached from its dock and drifted silently into deep space. No fanfare, no announcement, no flight plan filed with the Galactic Transit Authority. Back inside, Kellen cleared his throat. They say the Empire still has the children. They do, Leona said. For now. And that you're planning something. We are. Kellen waited. Nothing more came. Just the gentle clink of another chess piece falling. She was baiting him, and he knew it, but curiosity had its claws. What are you planning? Leona's gaze lifted, amused. You think I tell you? You invited me here, he said too quickly. To observe, she replied. Humans are excellent at being observed. We've had practice. Kellen's brows furrowed. Meaning? She stood, rifle slung with a smooth motion, and stepped toward the window. Did you know, she began, that when humans first joined the galactic community, we sent our nicest people forward, our gentlest minds, teachers, artists, scientists. We gave the galaxy jazz and coffee and poetry. Kellen nodded. And diplomacy. Right. And when we arrived, the Empire smiled and told us peace had reigned for 40,000 years. We smiled back. You gave us laws. We read every single one. There was a pause. You thought we were harmless, she said. Because we complied. Kellen swallowed. Aren't you? Leona smiled, not unlike a wolf politely correcting someone on the rules of hunting. Compliance isn't peace, Kellen. It's reconnaissance. From somewhere behind them, a subtle chime sounded. A coded signal. Leona tapped a cufflink twice, acknowledging it silently. Kellen sat up straighter. What was that? Ship movement, she said. 200 human vessels just vanished off galactic lanes. Nothing major. Just training exercises, of course. His expression twisted into something close to alarm. They didn't file flight paths. They wouldn't, Leona said. They were never really on those paths. Those were ghosts. Empty shells. The real ships left days ago. Kellen stood, eyes wide. That violates everything, she agreed. That's kind of the point. Another chime. This one Leona ignored. Her tone shifted, more gentle now. We gave the Empire decades to see us. To really see us. But the moment the peace accord was signed, you all stopped looking. You assumed we had been defanged, domesticated, tamed. I never assumed. Yes, you did, she said softly. Because it's what your species needed to believe. You're old. Your culture. Your systems. Your myths. But you forgot what it's like to encounter something new. Something that smiles when it's angry. Kellen looked toward the exit. The air had shifted. Leona picked up her rifle again, slinging it casually over one shoulder. We don't want a war, Kellen. We want our children. And we want to be left alone. You can't possibly believe the Empire will allow this level of independence. Then the Empire should have been more polite. She walked past him, pausing at the door. You're a good listener, Kellen. And I suspect your species won't be the one to fall. But if you have family near Volcari space, tell them to move. Soon. She exited without waiting for his answer. Across the galaxy, a meeting was underway. Private, urgent, and above all unofficial. Inside a cold metallic room buried within the Selentari home Accord archives, 3 figures sat at a triangular table lit only by the dull pulse of warning lights. The walls hummed with energy shielding, the kind used for high-security intelligence exchanges. Jinax, for fluffed and stress, shuffled reports in front of him. His small paws trembled as he pushed a translated memo toward the others. Human trade routes have gone dark. Communication relays are silent. Half of their merchant fleet has retired for maintenance, but no records support that. High Marshal Nerex's image, projected by Hollow, bared his fangs. Empty posturing. They are clever but cowardly. Veil of the Centauri narrowed her eyes. Is that what you thought when they boarded your station last year and rewrote your entire security system without firing a shot? They bribed someone, Nerex growled. No, Jinak said, surprising himself. They studied you, watched your protocols, predicted your redundancies, then exploited your inefficiencies. That isn't bribery. That's strategy. The room went quiet. Vale leaned forward. The ambassador gave us a deadline. 24 hours. He won't act. He already has. Nerex leaned back, curling his upper lip. They're soft, emotional, sentimental. They cannot stomach war. Jinex's voice was a whisper. Maybe that's the scariest kind. Nerex's projection blinked out. Communication severed. Vale sat still for a long time. We need to decide which side of history we prefer to be on, she said at last. At Earth Command, Ambassador Silas Wren stood in the middle of a simulated garden. Trees, birdsong, warm artificial sun. Designed for calm deliberation. He sipped something green from a ceramic mug, watching petals drift across the pond's surface. A man approached, uniformed, stone-faced. General Nathan Cole, head of external operations. They've seen the transmission, he said, without preamble. Good, Silas replied. They're rattled. They should be. Cole handed him a report. Silas scanned it, nodded once. Peace hold has begun extraction. Cole nodded. Half the embassy staff pulled. Civilians recalled. Non-essential infrastructure already offline. And the Centauri? They're debating whether to shield us or sell us. Silas set down his mug. They're wise enough to do both. There was a pause. Cole's voice softened slightly. Do you think this will work? Silas looked up, the lines of his face suddenly older. It has to. The garden faded around them. Simulation ending. We tried silence. We tried kindness. We tried everything short of violence. And now, Cole asked. Silas's smile was quiet and brittle. Now we try memory. They left the simulation chamber in step. Behind them, the garden dissolved into nothing. On the outer rim of Volcari territory, a mining colony blinked offline. One moment active, the next completely dark. No explosions, no alarms, just silence. Above it, a human vessel, unmarked and sleek, hovered like a god watching insects. Inside the ship, Captain Leona Briggs observed the screen. Her crew was silent, watching systems fail across the colony one by one. Confirmed 0 casualties, she said. Confirmed. Non-lethal shutdown complete. Atmospheric stabilization intact. She nodded. Good. Send the message. A simple transmission was launched. Across the Volcari command net, every screen flickered. The same video appeared. A human child, smiling, holding a stuffed animal. Then the image faded to a single sentence, translated into all known galactic tongues. You took what we love. We will now show you what that means. Then, black. At the Imperial Council, alarms began to sound. Nerex stormed from his quarters, demanding explanations. Reports flooded in: power disruptions, asset relocations, artificial intelligences refusing commands. Entire sectors of Volcari data architecture had been compromised. By whom? No trace. Just faint packets of data with old Earth military fingerprints. 40 years old. Buried. Forgotten. The galaxy realized something terrifying in that moment. Humanity hadn't just prepared for war. They had been practicing for peace as a cover. And they were very, very good at both. The 24 hours passed like a held breath. No response came from the Volcari High Command. No apology. No release. Just silence dressed in bureaucratic delay. They thought it was a game. That humans would snarl, bark, then retreat back behind their quaint words and empty threats. The Volcari had forgotten something ancient. Predators don't bark. They wait. On the 25th hour, Silas Wren stepped onto the bridge of the Dauntless Seraph, a command ship so bland in appearance the Galactic Empire had catalogued it as a long-range diplomatic cruiser. That classification, like much else about humanity, was deliberate misdirection. Inside, it was a nerve center of digital teeth and strategic silence. Silas took his place at the center of the bridge. Captain Leona Briggs stood already at attention, arms crossed, jaw tight with purpose. "Ambassador," she said with a sharp nod. "Captain," he returned, setting down a ceramic cup on the console next to her. "Chamomile. For your nerves." "I don't have nerves," she replied, though she took the cup anyway. Around them, officers moved like shadows, efficient, calm, already knowing what would come next. There were no dramatic countdowns or flashy displays. Just quiet confirmations passed like chess pieces. Silas folded his hands behind his back. "Any last-minute messages?" 3 denials, 2 deflections, 1 intercepted memo where a Volcari admiral calls us emotional livestock, Briggs said. Silas smiled faintly. "We've been called worse." "Earth Command stands by," she continued. "All fleets in position. 72 planetary strike packages ready. All non-lethal, as you requested." "Of course." He tapped a small device on his cufflink, transmitting a single signal across quantum relays to every human vessel in waiting. He turned to the crew. "Initiate response protocol Caliban." A silence fell, heavy and reverent. "Response protocol Caliban confirmed," said the XO. "We are live." What happened next was not war in the traditional sense. It was something worse, because it had been planned with surgical affection. On 13 Volcari-controlled planets, orbital satellites blinked out, replaced with artificial constellations of human drones that dropped signal-jamming spores into the atmosphere. Power grids collapsed. Surveillance systems turned inward, locking high-ranking officials in their own bunkers, while emergency response centers received waves of false reports. On mining moons and border outposts, Volcari weapon systems refused to arm, instead projecting musical tones, lullabies in ancient Earth languages. Not a single round fired, yet every military asset felt compromised, every sensor telling the same story. They are here. They know everything. And they are not afraid. In the Selentari council halls, the archives began to flicker. Sacred tomes and holographic wisdom texts rewritten. Not deleted, just overwritten with annotated human footnotes. One scroll now bore the title, "A Meditation on Misjudging Mammals." At the heart of it all, a message pulsed across every public channel in the Galactic Empire. "We asked nicely. Now we ask correctly." In the Empire's core systems, chaos bloomed like a flower under heat. High Marshal Nerex was in the middle of berating his communications director when the lights in his war chamber dimmed to red. Every screen showed the same thing: 2 human children in a quiet room, sleeping beneath Earth-standard security blankets, untouched, unharmed, protected. Then came the twist. The camera panned, revealing Captain Briggs standing nearby, cradling a cup of tea. She looked into the lens. "They're fine," she said. "Are you?" Nerex roared, knocking over his console. "You dare invade our command systems?" Briggs's recorded face tilted her head. "We dare much worse, Marshal. But we're restraining ourselves. For now." Nerex ordered a counterstrike. His ships didn't move. The command queue had been intercepted, replaced with a soft text override that simply read, "NO." The horror didn't come from explosions. It came from the realization that humanity didn't need to fire a single weapon to break the illusion of control. On the bridge of the Dauntless Seraph, Briggs watched the reports unfold in silence. Silas sipped his tea. "Estimated Volcari system paralysis?" he asked. 91%, Briggs replied. "Remaining 9% are isolated colonies too primitive to interfere." "Casualties?" "None. Except pride. Possibly a few strokes in their high command." "Acceptable losses," Silas said, dry as dust. Across the galaxy, allies watched in stunned fascination. The Tixari released a flurry of bureaucratic apologies, insisting they had always supported human rights, even retroactively. The Centauri convened a quiet council in secret. Several of their elder sages wept. One recorded a message for Silas, in which he asked only one question: "How long have you been planning this?" Silas never replied. Not yet. At the human embassy on Peace Old, two children played with toy blocks under the gentle hum of artificial light. Jenny, the girl with the bruised palms, now wore soft gloves woven with adaptive healing tech. Her brother Caleb had constructed a crude model of a Volcari warship and was gleefully disassembling it with a plastic dinosaur. A human intelligence agent observed from a discreet corner. He logged their heart rates, cognitive recovery, and speech patterns. All normal. All human. He marked the file, recovered. Stable. Do not provoke. Elsewhere at the Galactic News Corps, reporters scrambled to understand what had just happened. Every time they attempted to publish a theory, their system slowed, diverted, or replaced their graphics with a message from an AI that politely reminded them, "Humanity has responded. The matter is closed. Thank you for your compliance." Back aboard the Seraph, a junior officer turned in his seat. "Sir, the Empire has issued a call for emergency talks. They request neutral ground. They're offering to return the children, no conditions." Silas blinked once. No conditions? They're even offering reparations. He turned to Briggs. "That's unexpected." "Fear," she said, "does wonders for manners." Indeed. He stood. "Signal Earth. Begin diplomatic reintegration sequencing. Inform the Empire we accept their offer for talks. Send the children's recorded health status. Let them see we don't hold grudges." Briggs raised a brow. "Even though we do." Silas sipped his tea, then smiled. "Especially because we do." She smirked. "And if they back out?" Silas set his cup down. "We already taught them what we are. Let's see if they remember." Hours later, the Galactic Empire's leadership gathered in the crystalline summit hall of Jelvatora Prime, a neutral site once used for interspecies marriage ceremonies. Now, it would serve a more somber purpose. Silas arrived first, flanked by human aides dressed in formal Earth attire. Quiet, poised, dangerous. No weapons visible. None needed. The alien delegates took their seats slowly. Veil of the Centauri avoided his eyes. Jinax offered a trembling nod. Nerex, flanked by two bruised aides, sat rigid, jaw clenched. Silas waited for the room to still. Then he stood. "Children," he began, voice even, "are not weapons. They are not bargaining chips. They are not political fodder." No one moved. "We have proven our point," he continued. "But I will repeat it so there is no ambiguity. If you touch our children again, we will not simply disable your infrastructure." He leaned forward. "We will erase your stars." The words were quiet, not shouted, not dramatic, but they landed like stones dropped into still water. And the ripples would last for generations. Silas sat. There was no applause. Only nods. Slow. Shaken. Resigned. The Volcari signed the surrender of jurisdiction within the hour. The children were officially returned, symbolically, since they were already safe. The Empire issued a rare formal apology. Reparations began in the form of trade favors and access to previously restricted star routes. Humanity took none of the spoils. They didn't need them. As the final signatures were inked into the Treaty Reformation Charter, Vale approached Silas privately. "You planned this," she said softly. "Didn't you?" He didn't answer. She tried again. "You knew they'd react. You let them." Silas finally looked at her. "We gave them the same gift we give all civilizations, the chance to do the right thing first. And when they didn't," he smiled, "we did what humans have always done." She hesitated. "And what is that exactly?" His voice was colder now, though still wrapped in velvet. "We end the things that try to break us." He turned and walked away. In the silence that followed, Vale stood alone, watching the stars above the dome shimmer with artificial calm. She understood something then, something ancient and terrifying and beautiful. Humanity didn't break the peace. The peace had never truly included them. And now the galaxy would remember. Silas Wren stepped into the courtyard of the Earth Embassy on Concord Station for the last time. Cherry trees, artificial but lovingly tended, bloomed in gravity-controlled silence, petals drifting like ceremonial ash. Children played near the koi ponds, supervised by security personnel whose smiles never reached their eyes. The air smelled of tea and ozone, peace manufactured with military precision. Behind him, the door slid shut with a soft hiss. His shoes clicked softly on the stone path. He paused beneath the branches, watching Jenny and Caleb feed the fish. Jenny had stopped wearing the gloves. The skin on her palms had healed. Not perfectly, but enough. She saw him and waved. He returned it with a subtle nod, the kind only children understood. "Are we going home now?" Caleb asked, bouncing on his feet. "Soon," Silas said. "The ship is ready. Just a few more grown-up things to finish." Jenny squinted at him. "Did they say sorry yet?" Silas crouched down beside her, eyes kind. "They did." "Good," she said, kicking her feet. "Then we won." "No, Jenny," he murmured. "We reminded them." Behind him, a soft cough. Leona Briggs approached, still in uniform, though the rifle was gone. For now. She offered him a thin slate, her face unreadable. "Final reports," she said. "Volcari systems 96% operational. Selentari rebuilding trust. Tixari still twitchy." "They always were," Silas said, standing. Briggs handed him another file. Unofficial report from the Volcari frontier. Civil unrest. Some protests. One general publicly resigned. He said, and I quote, "We mistook the silence of the humans for surrender. Turns out it was something closer to prayer." Silas let the words settle. How poetic. "Do you want the strategic projections?" she asked. He shook his head. "No. I know them already." Briggs studied him. "You think it'll happen again, don't you?" "Not yet," he said. "They'll remember for a while. But history has a short fuse." She exhaled. "So what now?" "We leave," he said simply. Just like that. Silas turned back to the children. "We didn't burn their cities. We didn't occupy their worlds. We gave them a gift." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "Terror." "Memory," he corrected. "We gave them the one thing empires hate, the realization that their dominance is conditional, that fear can rise in quiet places, behind smiles." He looked up at the cherry blossoms. "That monsters don't always snarl." Briggs was quiet a moment. "They'll say we're mad." "Of course," Silas replied. "But only because we didn't destroy them. That confuses people more than fire ever will." Far above the station, human ships began their slow withdrawal from contested space. No celebration. No victory speeches. Just disengagement. Surgical. Clean. Terrifying in its finality. The Galactic Council, now fractured but breathing, had not expected such restraint. Some called it mercy. Others saw it as the long breath before a second storm. Every analyst, from Selentari scribes to Tixari logicians, filed the same conclusion under different language. Humanity was not to be provoked again. In the council chambers, Vale reread Silas's speech. She had watched it live, had even nodded at the clarity of it. But now alone it struck her deeper. His phrasing, simple, elegant, terrible. "We end the things that try to break us." She whispered it to herself, testing the cadence. It was not the statement of a warrior. It was a truth whispered by a parent, a teacher, a friend. That was the problem. It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like policy. A younger diplomat entered her chamber, breathless. "They're gone," he said. "Who?" "The humans. They've left Concord Station. The embassies are shuttered. Communication lines closed. Everything automated or self-erasing." Vale stood, heart heavier than it should have been. "They'll be back." "You think they'll retaliate again?" "No," she said. "They'll return when someone else forgets." He blinked. "That could take centuries." She turned her gaze toward the stars. "It won't." In a quiet bar on a Rimworld station, Jinax sat nursing a cup of something pink and fizzy. He hadn't spoken at the final session. No one had asked him to. But he'd watched everything. Every video. Every broadcast. every recalibrated threat veiled in Earth's velvet tongue. He took a shaky sip. A Volcari merchant sat beside him, grumbling to a companion. It was a trick, a bluff. They wouldn't have done more. Jinax didn't look at him. You think so? He asked softly. They're weak. They shut down a galactic empire without bloodshed, smoke and mirrors. Jinax turned, finally meeting the alien's eyes. My cousin worked maintenance on one of the relay stations they hit. He was offline for 37 minutes. In that time, the humans replaced 3 core processors with backups from ships that didn't exist. He found a message in one of the system logs. The merchant frowned. What message? Jinax leaned in. It said, "We remember." The merchant stared at him. Jinax finished his drink and left. Back on Earth, under a real sky and real trees, Silas walked the edge of a small garden outside his home. It had been months since the children were returned. Now they ran barefoot across the lawn, shouting over a ball game neither he nor Briggs could name. It didn't matter. The sounds were right. Briggs sat on the porch, hands wrapped around a mug, not tea. Something stronger. They think we've gone back to sleep, she said. We have, Silas replied. For now. She watched the kids chase each other under a spring sun. We were too kind. No, he said. We were exactly kind enough. She looked over. You believe that? I do, he said. Because someday someone will touch another child, or another settlement, or a convoy. And when they do, the galaxy will whisper our name. And then, he looked out over the garden. Then we wake up again. A wind stirred the trees. A bird sang somewhere unseen. Jenny shrieked with laughter as Caleb tagged her and ran. Briggs sighed. I hope they remember. Silas smiled, his voice as soft as the wind. They will, or we'll remind them. Elsewhere, in the dark void between systems, a single human vessel remained. Sleek, silent, awaiting nothing. Its AI watched passing debris, pinged satellites, tracked interstellar whispers. Its crew, deep in cryo-sleep, carried no weapons. Only recordings, letters, images, proof. The vessel bore no official insignia, no call sign. It drifted like a ghost, wrapped in the silence of vigilance. Inside its memory banks was a simple phrase, repeated every 20 cycles. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive easily. Humanity, when provoked, will show you what love looks like with its teeth bared. The ship waited. And so did the species that had once offered biscuits and tea to an empire. An empire that would never again mistake silence for weakness. And somewhere, across 1,000 star systems, children slept peacefully under human-built ceilings. Because now the galaxy understood what that peace truly cost. And what would come should it ever be broken again.